Do you remember the strange foods that made 1960s kitchens feel like experiments in taste and imagination? These mid-century creations filled grocery shelves with color, curiosity, and a boldness that defined an entire decade of eating. What made us trade that fearless flavor for something safer and blander? Jell-O salad with vegetables was the kind of dish that could only have been born in the 1960s. Bright, bold, and just a little bit questionable. Imagine opening a mold of shimmering lime gelatin, only to find carrots, celery, and olives suspended like strange artifacts inside. It was supposed to be refreshing and modern, a way to make vegetables exciting through the magic of gelatin. Cookbooks of the time called it the perfect blend of color and nutrition, and housewives proudly brought it to potlucks with smiles that masked quiet doubt. In truth, no one really knew whether to serve it with dinner or dessert. Some versions even included tuna or shrimp for extra salad appeal, which made things even more confusing. The idea was that gelatin could make any food look sophisticated, smooth, glossy, futuristic. At a time when kitchens were obsessed with convenience and flair, this wobbly creation fit right in. But for all its sparkle, it rarely tasted as good as it looked. One wrong combination of flavors, and you had a disaster encased in lime green. Today, it stands as one of the strangest culinary experiments of the decade, a reminder that not everything that jiggles belongs on a plate. Aspic molds were the glamorous cousins of Jell-O salad, except they were savory, not sweet. Picture clear gelatin filled with shrimp, boiled eggs, sliced olives, and chopped meat, all arranged like an edible stained glass window. The 1960s were fascinated by food that looked as impressive as it was impractical, and aspic molds became the ultimate showpiece. Magazines called them dinner sculptures, a phrase that sounded much more appetizing than the reality of cold, jellied chicken. Hostesses spent hours pouring broth-based gelatin into copper molds, carefully layering ingredients to get that perfect suspended look. When unmolded, the dish shimmered under the dining room lights, elegant and eerie all at once. It was considered high society dining, proof that your kitchen was as modern as your television set. But under the beauty lay a texture that most guests struggled to love: slippery, rubbery, and oddly meaty. Many recipes came straight from corporate test kitchens, where presentation trumped taste. Today, aspic molds are museum-worthy curiosities, the edible art projects that time forgot. The Vienna sausage gelatin ring might just be the crown jewel of 1960s party horror. This masterpiece of ambition featured canned Vienna sausages floating in a translucent ring of savory gelatin, usually flavored with tomato or beef broth. It was often garnished with hard-boiled eggs or parsley sprigs for decoration. It was a centerpiece meant to impress, a conversation starter no one actually wanted to eat. The recipe promised elegance in a single mold, but one look at those little sausages encased in wobbling jelly told another story. This dish was born from America's obsession with efficiency and canned foods. If it came in a tin, it was modern, clean, and somehow patriotic. Housewives who served it did so with pride, even as guests politely pushed it to the edge of their plates. The gelatin ring was chilled to perfection and sliced like a cake, often served with crackers or a questionable mayonnaise-based sauce. Today, it's hard not to marvel at how such a strange concoction ever made its way to the dinner table. The Vienna sausage ring was both a product and a parody of its time. Proof that in the 1960s, presentation was everything, even when taste was nowhere to be found. Molded tuna mousse was the kind of dish that made you question both the decade and your own taste buds. It began with canned tuna, mayonnaise, and gelatin, all whipped together into a pinkish paste and poured into a fish-shaped mold. Once chilled, it was unmolded onto a bed of lettuce, its glossy sheen daring you to take a bite. Cookbooks described it as sophisticated seafood for the modern hostess, but most people described it as, why is it cold? The mousse was meant to be served as a dip with crackers, its creamy, fishy flavor hiding behind the illusion of elegance. Guests pretended to enjoy it because that was what good manners required, though the smell alone could test anyone's resolve. Still, in an era obsessed with molded foods, it checked every box: color, convenience, and novelty. The fish mold itself became a cultural icon, seen in kitchens across suburbia. Some hostesses even added food coloring to make it ocean pink. Today, molded tuna mousse remains one of the most infamous dishes of the 1960s, a nostalgic reminder of a time when ambition, not appetite, ruled the dinner table. Liverloaf was the kind of canned delicacy that 1960s advertising swore would make entertaining effortless. It came neatly packed in a shiny tin, promising rich flavor and European sophistication in a sliceable spread. In reality, it was a smooth, pinkish blend of liver, fat, and mystery seasonings that could turn any party table into a dare. The advertisements were full of smiling hostesses spreading it onto crackers, blissfully unaware of the puzzled expressions it would cause moments later. The taste was iron-heavy and salty, somewhere between meat paste and perfume. Still, it fit perfectly into the era's fascination with canned convenience. No cooking, no mess, just open and serve. Some recipes even suggested shaping it into little rosettes with a piping bag for elegance. Liverloaf lived in the space between luxury and lunacy, the perfect example of mid-century faith in industrial food. It faded quietly as tastes changed, but its memory lingers, proof that not every shortcut to sophistication is worth taking. Spam and pineapple bake was a dish that defined the 1960s strange obsession with sweet and savory fusion. Slices of Spam were arranged neatly in a casserole dish, each topped with a bright pineapple ring and a drizzle of brown sugar glaze. It was baked until syrupy and golden, filling kitchens with the scent of tropical mystery and processed meat. For many families, it was a symbol of post-war optimism. Hawaii in a can, served with pride and a side of canned green beans. The combination of salt, sweetness, and nostalgia made it oddly comforting, even if it didn't always look the part. Advertisers marketed it as both quick weeknight dinner and party showpiece, and somehow it managed to be both. Housewives praised its convenience while quietly admitting it was an acquired taste. But for children growing up in that era, the dish meant home, a warm plate of strange comfort in Technicolor kitchens. Today, the Spam and pineapple bake has faded into novelty, but its cheerful absurdity remains unforgettable. It was the edible embodiment of the 1960s, bright, bold, and blissfully unaware of its own weirdness. Canned macaroni and cheese sounded like the future when it hit shelves. A complete meal, pasta and sauce, sealed in a tin and ready to heat in minutes. It was marketed as the next big leap in convenience, promising creamy perfection without the mess. In truth, opening the can often revealed something closer to orange soup than dinner. The noodles were limp, the cheese oddly sweet, but it was fast and modern, and that mattered most in the 1960s kitchen. Advertisers sold it as space-age cooking, the kind of meal that fit perfectly with the decade's fascination with astronauts and progress. It was also a favorite among college students and single men who saw it as proof they could cook. Despite its questionable texture, canned macaroni and cheese became a minor icon of mid-century living, served proudly alongside TV dinners and instant coffee. It promised a taste of tomorrow, even if tomorrow tasted vaguely metallic. Tuna casserole with potato chips was the great equalizer of 1960s comfort food. No dinner table was complete without it. A bubbling dish of canned tuna, peas, condensed soup, and a golden crust of crushed chips on top. It was cheap, filling, and endlessly adaptable, the unofficial meal of every middle-class family. The crunch of potato chips against the creamy filling became a nostalgic sound of home, one bite away from childhood. Housewives loved it because it could feed a crowd on a budget, while children devoured it because it was pure comfort disguised as dinner. Some added mushrooms or cheese to dress it up, while others stuck to the basics, trusting the chips to do the heavy lifting. Tuna casserole represented the heart of 1960s cooking. Resourceful, practical, and unapologetically canned. It was served at potlucks, school functions, and Sunday suppers, a dish that united neighbors across kitchen tables. Today, it remains one of the few mid-century creations people still make, minus the chips, but never without the memories. Canned creamed chipped beef, or SOS as soldiers once called it, found new life in the 1960s kitchens. After the war, it was repackaged as an easy, shelf-stable meal for busy families. The beef came in thin strips, swimming in a thick white sauce that needed only to be poured over toast. It looked simple, but it carried with it the taste of nostalgia. Homecomings, diners, and late-night suppers when money was tight. For some, it was comfort food. For others, it was punishment on a plate. Still, it found its audience among homemakers who craved convenience above all else. The dish became a staple of military households and a reliable standby for anyone who needed dinner fast. Its salty, creamy flavor was oddly addictive, though few admitted it out loud. Today, it's remembered with both fondness and disbelief, a relic of an era when canned meals were considered modern miracles. Frozen chicken a la king was luxury made simple, or at least that was the promise. Packed neatly into aluminum trays, it was one of the first ready-made meals to offer restaurant quality, dining at home. Chunks of chicken swam in creamy white sauce, dotted with peas and pimentos, all frozen into a perfect rectangle. It was the dream of the atomic age. A hot meal in 10 minutes, no apron required. Families gathered around the television, forks in hand, tasting progress one bite at a time. The flavor was salty, the texture somewhere between stew and paste, but no one seemed to care. It was convenience, it was modernity. It was the future, served steaming from a metal tray. Advertisements promised fine dining without fuss, and for a while, they were right. Frozen chicken a la king symbolized an America that believed innovation could be tasted. Today, it's a relic of optimism in foil, remembered fondly by those who grew up believing dinner could come from the freezer and still feel special. Deviled ham spread was the fiery little secret hiding in nearly every 1960s refrigerator. Sold in small cans with a mischievous red devil on the label, it promised quick lunches and effortless appetizers with a spicy kick. The paste itself was a curious mix of minced ham, seasonings, and mystery ingredients, all blended to a creamy, slightly alarming texture. Many families kept several cans tucked in the pantry, ready for surprise guests or a last-minute sandwich. The spicy bite made it feel just daring enough to be modern, even if no one quite knew what gave it that heat. The smell alone could fill a kitchen in seconds, salty, smoky, and sharp enough to wake anyone from an afternoon nap. Housewives swore by it for sandwiches, while cocktail hosts used it to fill celery sticks or crackers with neat little dollops of pinkish spread. It was easy, portable, and, if you didn't think too hard about what was in it, delicious. The product thrived in an era that worshipped convenience, and its devilish mascot became a symbol of modern snacking. For children, it was lunchbox gold. For adults, a sign that the party table was officially open. Today, it's a nostalgic reminder of a time when canned meat was considered bold, even daring, a flavor that burned just enough to feel exciting. Underwood deviled chicken spread was the gentler cousin of deviled ham, milder, creamier, and somehow even more mysterious. Packed in the same small tins, it was meant to offer sophistication on a budget, the kind of quick protein a modern hostess could turn into magic. Spread on white bread triangles or topped with olives, it was the height of mid-century convenience. The texture was smooth and spreadable, making it perfect for dainty finger sandwiches at bridge clubs and church luncheons. Its delicate flavor made it easy to dress up with pickles or paprika, giving homemakers a sense of creativity without much effort. Magazine ads boasted that it could turn a can into an elegant meal, a promise only the 1960s could sell with a straight face. It had that distinct tangy flavor that was part comfort, part confusion, halfway between chicken salad and baby food. Still, it found its way into every lunchbox, picnic basket, and cocktail platter. Some homemakers even mixed it with cream cheese and shaped it into balls for parties, rolling them in nuts for flair. It was easy, efficient and proudly artificial, just like so many foods of its time. Today, deviled chicken spread survives as a relic in nostalgic pantries, proof that even canned poultry once had its 15 minutes of fame. Canned deviled crab meat promised the taste of the seaside without ever leaving your kitchen, but what it delivered was something else entirely. Sold as a shortcut for instant crab cakes, it came packed in briny oil and flecked with imitation seasonings that gave off a suspiciously metallic aroma. Still, it was considered a delicacy, one that even inland families could afford to enjoy. Cooks loved how easily it could be transformed with a few breadcrumbs and a dash of lemon juice, making any dinner feel like a coastal feast. Families who couldn't dream of fresh seafood embraced it as a tiny luxury from a tin. Recipe booklets proudly paired it with breadcrumbs, mayonnaise, and just enough spice to disguise its origins. Once fried or baked, it became something resembling seafood, though not quite recognizable. For cocktail parties, homemakers stuffed it into shells or ramekins and called it fancy dining. It was all about illusion. Affordable luxury wrapped in a label that said authentic. The taste was divisive. Some loved its rich saltiness, others compared it to sea-scented paste. Either way, deviled crab meat became a pantry staple for the bold and the thrifty alike. Today, it stands as a curious reminder of a decade that valued ingenuity over accuracy, proof that in the 1960s even seafood came in a can. Banana and mayonnaise sandwiches were one of those culinary oddities that could only have thrived in the mid-20th century. Soft white bread, sliced banana, and a generous spread of mayonnaise. Together, they created a texture that was part dessert, part dare. For many families, it was a quick, cheap lunch that required no stove, no prep, and apparently no hesitation. Some Southerners swore by it, calling it a perfect blend of sweet and tangy. Others added peanut butter or lettuce, insisting it made the dish gourmet. Some recipes even suggested a drizzle of honey or a sprinkle of salt to enhance the flavor, as if that might save it. The combination somehow became popular enough to feature in cookbooks and lunch menus alike. It was considered nourishing, energy-packed, and surprisingly classy when cut into diagonals. The strange sweetness mixed with tangy mayo created a flavor that defied logic but satisfied nostalgia. Today, it survives as a whispered memory, a sandwich so wrong it became right, a time capsule of simplicity that dared to believe anything could go between two slices of bread. Canned fruit cocktail desserts were a fixture of every mid-century dinner table. The sweet finale no one could quite escape. Each can promised tropical luxury, but what poured out was a syrupy mix of mushy pears, peaches, grapes, and those signature bright red cherries. Served in crystal bowls or atop cottage cheese, it was called light and refreshing. Some homemakers even used the syrup to flavor cake batters or gelatin molds, wasting nothing from the precious can. Children fought for the maraschino cherry, the ultimate prize floating in golden syrup. It was the dessert you served when you wanted something fancy but had only 5 minutes and one can opener. Housewives dressed it up with whipped cream or mixed it into gelatin molds, giving it an oddly celebratory feel. Children loved fishing for the lone cherry, the prize in a sea of yellow cubes. For many families, fruit cocktail represented comfort and modern ease, a way to end a meal with sweetness straight from the pantry. Its glossy cubes and pastel colors fit perfectly into the 1960s aesthetic of polished, predictable beauty. Today, it's a relic of canned contentment, reminding us that luxury once came soaked in syrup. Whipped gelatin salad cups blurred every line between dessert and dinner, and somehow that was the point. These pastel creations were layered with fruit, whipped cream, and gelatin, served proudly in crystal glasses to give an air of refinement. They jiggled, sparkled, and defied categorization, half salad, half sundae, fully confusing. Guests never knew whether to eat them with a fork or a spoon, which made them the talk of every dinner party. Home cooks loved the theatrical reveal when the gelatin layers wobbled under the dining room lights. In cookbooks, they were celebrated as the modern woman's answer to elegance, which says everything you need to know about the 1960s idea of fancy. Lime and strawberry were the most popular flavors, often paired with canned pineapple or shredded coconut. Each spoonful was a time warp of sweetness and texture, a literal wobble between ambition and absurdity. Housewives spent hours chilling and layering them, hoping to impress dinner guests with symmetry and shine. When served, they wobbled like chandeliers, catching the light in their pastel glory. Today, they survive only in retro cookbooks and nostalgic potlucks, where curiosity outweighs good sense. Whip and chill dessert mix was America's shortcut to instant indulgence. A powdered mix somewhere between pudding and mousse, it whipped up into sugary clouds of airy sweetness in minutes. The commercials promised elegance in no time, and for many families it delivered just that, especially when topped with canned fruit. It was the dessert of choice for weeknights when energy was low but appearances mattered. Housewives trusted it like a friend that never failed them, always sweet, smooth, and perfectly fake. Mothers praised it as the perfect dessert for unexpected guests, the miracle of the modern pantry. It came in flavors like chocolate, vanilla, and butterscotch, each one smooth, glossy, and just artificial enough to taste futuristic. For children, it was magic. Add milk, beat with a whisk, and dessert appeared like a science experiment gone delicious. Whip and chill captured the spirit of the 1960s, fast, fun, and a little over the top. It was light enough to feel guilt-free, rich enough to impress, and cheap enough to keep on hand at all times. Today, it lives on in memory as the dessert that taught America to trust the box more than the recipe book. Instant whipped cream aerosol topping was more than dessert. It was a spectacle. Press the nozzle and suddenly a perfect swirl of sweet foam crowned your pie, sundae, or even your morning coffee. It was modernity in a can, promising luxury at the push of a button. Children treated it like a toy, spraying clouds of cream into the air or directly into their mouths when no one was looking. Advertisers called it fun in a can, a slogan that summed up both its charm and its chaos. The hiss of the spray became the sound of celebration, the culinary equivalent of confetti. In the 1960s advertising, it was sold as the glamorous alternative to messy homemade cream, space-age efficiency for the stylish homemaker. Children fought over who got to press the nozzle, sometimes skipping the dessert entirely and going straight for the can. Its texture was lighter than air, its sweetness instant gratification. It was the future of fun, and everyone wanted a taste. Though real whipped cream would eventually return to favor, the aerosol version remains a nostalgic icon, a sugary symbol of mid-century optimism and joy in its purest, most artificial form. Lime sherbet punch with ginger ale was the unofficial party drink of the 1960s, the frothy green masterpiece that turned every table into a celebration. Made with sherbet, ginger ale, and sometimes a splash of pineapple juice, it bubbled and fizzed like something out of a science fair. The pastel foam spilled over punch bowls at weddings, showers, and birthday parties alike. It was as much decoration as it was refreshment, its electric green color lighting up any buffet table. Some hostesses floated lemon slices or mint sprigs on top, calling it a taste of spring. For many children, their first grown-up drink came in a paper cup of this neon sweetness. It looked magical and tasted like minty soda mixed with dessert, a combination that somehow worked. The recipe spread through magazines and community cookbooks like wildfire, cementing its place in mid-century entertaining. No 1960s hostess dared throw a party without it. As the ladle scooped through the melting sherbet, laughter seemed to rise with the bubbles. Today, the drink lives on mostly in memory and vintage recipe cards, its cheerful green hue forever linked to a decade that believed sugar and sparkle could solve anything. Marshmallow and sweet potato casserole was the dish that proved 1960s holidays had no rules. Equal parts side dish and dessert, it blended earthy sweet potatoes with brown sugar, butter, and an unapologetic layer of marshmallows toasted to golden perfection. It wasn't subtle, it was sugary, sticky, and stunning. For children, it was the best part of the meal. For adults, it was the excuse to have dessert twice. The casserole's combination of candy and comfort embodied the era's love of excess. Magazines called it the modern feast dish, uniting traditional flavors with a playful twist. Every Thanksgiving table glowed under its caramelized top, its sweetness softening even the driest turkey. The aroma alone could fill a house with nostalgia before the first bite. Today, it remains a controversial classic, half loved, half mocked, but wholly unforgettable. In the world of 1960s cooking, nothing captured indulgence quite like this dish that dared to blur every boundary between dinner and dessert. Tang instant breakfast drink was the taste of the future, or at least that was what every 1960s advertisement wanted you to believe. Bright orange, unnaturally sweet, and endlessly shelf-stable, Tang was a powdered beverage you mixed with water and pretended was juice. Housewives bought it for their kids, but it was NASA that made it legendary. When astronauts took it aboard early space missions, the drink became an overnight sensation, earning the title the beverage of the stars. Children stirred it in their glasses with wide eyes, imagining themselves floating in zero gravity while sipping on science itself. Breakfast tables turned into launch pads, and every gulp came with a dose of futuristic pride. The commercials promised energy, vitamins, and a new kind of refreshment, though few stopped to wonder what was actually in the mix. Tang's flavor was sharp and artificial, more like candy than citrus, but that was exactly its charm. It wasn't meant to taste like nature. It was meant to taste like tomorrow. Families embraced it as a symbol of progress, pouring it alongside bacon and toast as if it connected them to the space age. Over time, real orange juice reclaimed its place, but Tang never truly faded. It remains a fluorescent relic of an era that believed powdered drinks and rocket ships were both proof that humanity was heading somewhere brighter, one spoonful at a time. Aspartame test sodas were the first wave of America's war on sugar, long before anyone really understood what diet meant. In the 1960s, soda companies began experimenting with artificial sweeteners, creating drinks that promised the same fizzy joy without the calories. On paper, it sounded revolutionary. In practice, it was like drinking chemistry homework. The aftertaste was unforgettable, a lingering metallic sweetness that clung to your mouth and refused to leave. People smiled politely through the first sip, then quietly reached for the real thing. Yet, for a short time, diet sodas became the symbol of modern self-control. Advertisements showed slim women in sleek dresses sipping from glass bottles, promising figure-friendly refreshment and a new kind of freedom. The early formulas used cyclamate and later aspartame, long before regulations caught up to science. Despite the odd flavor, they sold millions. They represented progress, convenience, and the promise that indulgence could somehow come without consequence. Eventually, they would evolve into the diet colas we know today, but those first test sodas remain a strange experiment. Proof that the 1960s wanted health, sweetness, and innovation all at once, even if it came with a taste no one could quite forget. Chicken in a basket frozen dinners were the epitome of mid-century efficiency, a complete meal, neatly packed and ready to slide into the oven. Inside the box were crispy breaded drumsticks, crinkle-cut fries, and a little compartment of gravy or vegetables, all served in a paper basket meant to mimic diner charm. It was marketed as fast food elegance for the stay-at-home family, a way to enjoy restaurant flair without leaving the couch. When that oven door opened, the kitchen filled with the smell of fried chicken, even if it came from foil instead of frying oil. Children saw it as a treat, while parents saw it as salvation from cooking after long days. The basket was the gimmick, a cardboard illusion of freshness that fooled no one but still made everyone smile. The chicken was often dry, the fries soggy, but the idea was revolutionary. You could eat straight from the box, no dishes required, and still feel like you were dining out. Families would arrange their trays in front of the television, unwrapping their paper baskets just in time for the evening news. It wasn't fine dining, but it was freedom, the kind of effortless living the 1960s promised in every advertisement. Today, chicken in a basket frozen dinners stand as nostalgic proof that convenience was king, even if the crown came wrapped in cardboard and coated in crumbs. Pimento cheese spread in a jar was a Southern staple reimagined for the supermarket shelf. Traditionally, It was a simple mix of shredded cheese, mayonnaise, and diced pimentos, served fresh at family gatherings. But the 1960s had no time for fresh. Enter the jarred version, smooth, tangy, and aggressively orange, often dyed brighter than a traffic cone. It was both comfort food and science experiment, a cheese spread that could survive the apocalypse yet still claim to be homemade. Housewives kept it stocked for sandwiches, celery sticks, or elegant cocktail snacks on crackers. It was quick, versatile, and unapologetically artificial, just how the era liked its food. Some brands even boasted of their whipped texture and spreadable luxury, words that made it sound more like lotion than lunch. Yet, despite its neon hue, pimento cheese in a jar held a special place in American kitchens. It was dependable, nostalgic, and undeniably strange. For many, the taste still evokes memories of Sunday picnics and holiday buffets, where convenience mattered more than purity. Today, the homemade version reigns again, but the jarred spread remains a glowing monument to mid-century innovation. A little too bright, a little too bold, and exactly what the 1960s loved to call progress. TV dinner. Salisbury steak was the heavyweight champion of 1960s convenience cuisine. Every freezer in America had at least one. A shiny foil tray filled with a dark, glossy slab of steak, mashed potatoes, and a token vegetable that never quite thawed right. The meal was inspired by real Salisbury steak, but somewhere along the way, it became its own curious creation. Part meatloaf, part mystery. The gravy was thick, the texture soft, and the taste metallic, yet it carried an unmistakable charm that made it oddly comforting. When it hit the oven, families knew dinner was only minutes away. Fathers would kick back in recliners while mothers pulled the steaming trays from the oven, setting them neatly on folding TV trays in front of the latest sitcom or variety show. It was dining and entertainment rolled into one, a new American ritual that made even the simplest meal feel futuristic. The Salisbury steak's rich, salty sauce covered a multitude of sins, masking its questionable ingredients beneath layers of nostalgia. Advertisements hailed it as a complete dinner for the modern family. And they weren't wrong. It was independence, wrapped in foil and flavored with progress. Today, it stands as both a punchline and a love letter to a decade that believed the future would come in frozen portions, served hot, eaten on a tray, and enjoyed with a side of black and white television. Rolling metal washtubs and wringers were the backbone of every household's cleaning routine. These heavy steel tubs stood ready each Monday, the unofficial National Laundry Day. Water was heated on the stove, poured in by the bucket, and mixed with soap flakes or lye. The smell of hot metal, soap, and steam filled the air, a kind of domestic symphony that marked the start of the week. Some women joked that if heaven had laundry, it would still begin on Monday. After scrubbing clothes on a washboard, women would feed them through a hand-cranked wringer to squeeze out every drop. The process was noisy, exhausting, and occasionally dangerous. Many fingers met their fate between those rollers. Yet despite the effort, there was satisfaction in seeing bright, clean clothes flapping on the line by afternoon. The wringer tub was both a chore and a point of pride, a symbol of diligence that powered the home long before electricity took over. Today, the sight of one evokes admiration for the sheer endurance it demanded, and gratitude that laundry now takes minutes instead of hours. Aspartame heavy diet drinks ruled the 1980s like artificial royalty. Every company wanted in on the low-calorie craze, and aspartame was the magic word, sweeter than sugar, with zero guilt. But behind the fizzy slogans and pastel cans was a growing storm of controversy. The commercials made it look glamorous, thin models sipping soda on beaches and boardwalks, living proof that chemistry could be chic. But reports of strange side effects, headaches, nausea, dizziness, began to spread. Health watchdogs accused companies of putting profit before safety, and suddenly, 0 calories didn't sound so refreshing. Reports of headaches, dizziness, and long-term health concerns turned the miracle sweetener into a national debate. Diet sodas that once promised vitality suddenly felt toxic. their ingredients lists sounding more like chemistry homework than refreshment. Regulators scrambled, companies reformulated, and loyal fans were left wondering if their favorite drinks were safe or secretly sinister. By the end of the decade, aspartame was under tighter scrutiny, forcing soda makers to reinvent themselves again. For those who remember the first wave of diet drinks, it was an era defined by blind faith in science and the rude awakening that followed. Space food sticks were supposed to make you feel like an astronaut, but most people felt more like hostages to bad taste. Marketed as the food of the future, these chewy, tube-shaped snacks promised energy, convenience, and space-age nutrition. In reality, they were rubbery chocolate glue wrapped in foil, sticking to your teeth and your soul in equal measure. The packaging screamed adventure, but the flavor whispered punishment. They were dense enough to survive re-entry, yet fragile enough to crumble into brown dust if left in the sun. Parents kept buying them because kids loved the NASA tie-in, not because anyone actually wanted to eat them. It was the only snack that could make both astronauts and children question their life choices. They came in flavors like caramel, peanut butter, and chocolate, though none resembled anything found on Earth. Kids begged their parents for them, imagining themselves floating in zero gravity, only to realize astronauts probably ate better than this. The ads showed smiling families pretending this was adventure food, but in every kitchen, the reaction was the same: confusion, then regret. The texture was somewhere between an eraser and a protein bar that lost its will to live. They disappeared by the 1980s, only to return decades later as a nostalgia novelty. Because apparently, even bad memories can make money if you wrap them in silver. Leave it to the 1950s to find a way to combine infants and industrial design. The glass baby bottle with a metal nipple was marketed as the hygienic choice for modern mothers. It promised durability, style, and the reassuring shine of polished chrome. In practice, it was a dentist's nightmare waiting to happen. Babies were encouraged to suckle from small metal spouts that turned freezing cold in winter and scorching hot in summer. The bottles themselves were heavy, slippery, and prone to shattering at the slightest drop. So basically, perfect for small, uncoordinated hands. Yet the ads were stunning. Rosy-cheeked babies drinking happily while mothers beamed at the future of feeding. Hospitals even endorsed them, believing glass and metal meant cleanliness. Plastic was considered cheap, rubber unsanitary. No one mentioned burns or lacerations. It was the golden age of over-engineering, where even baby care had to look like a rocket launch. Parents wanted sleek, scientific solutions to everything, even if they made no sense. By the end of the decade, common sense won. Soft silicone nipples replaced steel, and bottles became lighter and safer. But for a time, feeding your child looked like refueling a car. Clunky, dangerous, and somehow deeply optimistic. Jell-O gelatin molds turned every dessert table into a display of edible architecture. Bright, colorful, and a little bizarre, they were the showpieces of mid-century kitchens. Every family had a favorite combination: pineapple chunks, marshmallows, even shredded carrots suspended in translucent wobbling towers. Jell-O wasn't just food, it was performance. Mothers took pride in their molds, comparing layers and colors like painters admiring canvases. When that dessert wobbled onto the table, it wasn't just dessert, it was applause for creativity disguised as dinner. It represented control over nature itself. Sweetness, color, and texture, all perfectly contained in a shimmering mold. For housewives, it was creativity made visible, proof that the home could still be an art form. The sound of that wobbly jiggle at dinner parties became a symbol of pride, the centerpiece of gatherings from church socials to Christmas dinners. It photographed beautifully, tasted nostalgic, and looked futuristic. Kids loved its bounce. Adults admired its precision. Jell-O made dessert something both playful and sophisticated. In a decade obsessed with presentation and perfection, it captured the exact balance between science and showmanship. Every mold was a small, sweet victory for the modern homemaker. Iceboxes were the silent workhorses of the pre-refrigerator era. Made of wood and lined with tin or zinc, These coolers relied on large blocks of ice delivered by the local iceman. Families would carefully store milk, butter, and meat inside, hoping the chill would last until the next delivery. Every summer, children would race to the door when they heard the iceman's wagon, eager for a chip of ice on a hot day. Each delivery was a small event, the iceman hauling the dripping block through the door, leaving puddles that kids would trace with their fingers. Homemakers learned exactly how to stack food to make the cold last, a skill passed down like a family secret. The sound of melting ice and creaking hinges became the steady rhythm of daily life. Managing an icebox took skill, too warm and the food spoiled, too cold and the milk froze solid. Homemakers learned to balance the temperature like a science. The sound of melting ice dripping into the tray below was as familiar as a ticking clock. When electric refrigerators arrived, the ice boxes faded away, but they left behind the memory of simpler, slower kitchens where cold was a daily luxury. 3D Doritos, original formula, were snack evolution taken too far. Crunchy, puffed Doritos shaped like tiny shells of doom. Marketed as next-level snacking, they were fried in oil-heavy formulas that made them dangerously addictive, and later, questionable in the eyes of regulators. Each bite exploded with flavor dust and grease, leaving fingerprints that could identify you for days. Kids loved the sound they made, that loud, hollow crunch that echoed like fireworks. Parents hated the oil stains left on furniture, walls, and jeans. Health officials hated them even more when lab tests showed oil saturation levels bordering on hazardous. People loved the crunch, but their stomachs didn't always agree. Complaints about the oils used pushed the snack into the FDA's spotlight. For a while, 3D Doritos became the stuff of playground legend, the chip that bit back. By the early 2000s, they vanished, quietly replaced by safer and less greasy iterations. They returned years later, reformulated and rebranded, but the original remains a myth among snack enthusiasts, proof that sometimes the future of food is a little too oily to handle. Aids Diet Candy was one of those ideas that seemed genius until the world changed. Sold in small boxes, these chewy, chocolate-like cubes promised to take the edge off hunger while feeling indulgent. They actually worked, mostly because they tasted like vitamins and guilt. The commercials showed slim women smiling as they chewed, pretending it was delicious. The slogan, "AIDS helps you lose weight," became an instant disaster once the AIDS epidemic hit a decade later. By then, even loyal customers couldn't stomach the name, no matter how many rebrands the company tried. The name alone wasn't the problem in the 1970s. It was catchy, short, and even sophisticated. Then the 1980s arrived, and the global AIDS crisis made that name catastrophic. No marketing campaign could recover from the tragic coincidence. The product itself wasn't terrible, more caramel chew than candy. But no one could stomach the association. Within a few years, AIDS vanished completely. It remains one of the most unfortunate rebranding stories in history, a cautionary tale that timing can kill even the sweetest idea. Of all the 1950s food inventions, canned bread might be the strangest, and somehow the most practical. It came in shiny tins that promised freshness preserved for years. The dough was baked directly inside the can, resulting in a dense brown loaf that slid out like a sponge. It was oddly satisfying to open, and surprisingly edible with enough butter or jam. Advertisers pitched it as the future of convenience, perfect for camping, lunchboxes, and the inevitable nuclear apocalypse. Families loved it because it felt both comforting and futuristic, a loaf built to survive anything, even the end of the world. It was proof that America's appetite for innovation extended all the way to its pantry shelves. Housewives stocked it next to canned peaches and Spam, proud of their preparedness. It was comfort food with a metal edge, part bakery, part bunker ration. The taste? Sweet, slightly metallic, and unforgettably weird. Canned bread captured the contradictions of the era perfectly, optimistic, paranoid, and determined to can everything, even tradition. It's still made in small corners of New England today, but as a curiosity, not a comfort. Back then, though, it was survival you could slice. Swanson TV dinners changed the way America ate, literally overnight. Before them, families sat down together at the dining table, but by the mid-1950s, dinner was moving to the living room, served on a metal tray in front of the television. Each frozen meal, turkey, mashed potatoes, peas, and a brownie, felt futuristic, like something out of a science fair. Housewives loved them because they saved time, and children loved them because they felt special, like having a meal made just for them. Swanson's idea came from a surplus of Thanksgiving turkey, and what could have been a disaster turned into a cultural phenomenon. It was the perfect marriage of convenience and novelty, wrapped in shiny aluminum. The television tray soon became as essential as the set itself, transforming mealtime into family entertainment. It was food built for the atomic age, neat, portioned, and just modern enough to feel exciting. For the first time, America could eat and watch together, no mess, no fuss. It was comfort and convenience served hot in 25 minutes flat. The Swanson TV dinner wasn't just food, it was the birth of the modern mealtime, a sign that progress could be eaten with a fork. Victory Garden seed kits were one of the government's most ingenious wartime ideas. With rations tightening, families were urged to grow their own and ease the burden on the food supply. Each kit came with envelopes of vegetable seeds, beans, carrots, peas, lettuce, along with simple instructions for planting and harvesting. Children would help dig the soil behind homes, while neighbors shared advice and traded extra seeds over fences. Some families grew enough food to feed not just themselves, but entire neighborhoods, turning backyards into tiny farms. Victory gardens weren't just practical, they were emotional medicine, a way to fight back against fear with dirt under your fingernails. Rows of lettuce and tomatoes became symbols of victory just as much as flags and medals. These gardens became a unifying force across cities and farms alike, feeding communities both literally and emotionally. In backyards, schoolyards, and even city rooftops, little patches of green became symbols of pride and patriotism. Posters declared, "Plant a victory garden. Your vegetables fight for freedom," and millions took the message to heart. The modest seed kit gave ordinary people the power to make a difference one tomato at a time. Today, they remind us that survival and solidarity can bloom from the same handful of soil. Squeeze Parkay. Margarine looked like the future of cooking, smooth, golden, and ready to squirt straight from a bottle. You didn't need a knife, a dish, or even manners. Just aim and squeeze. For busy 1980s households, it was heaven in a bottle. But the dream melted fast. The plastic packaging was made with chemicals that didn't play well with heat, and kitchens tend to get hot. Over time, the bottles began leaching toxins into the margarine, especially when left near stoves or windows. Families started noticing a strange film forming on their food, slick, waxy, and nothing like butter. Laboratory tests later confirmed what everyone feared. The bottles were slowly contaminating their contents. It was the kind of convenience no one wanted anymore. The FDA wasn't impressed. Consumers noticed strange aftertastes, discoloration, and even separation inside the bottle. Parkay scrambled to defend the product, insisting it was safe when used correctly, but the damage was done. By the late 1980s, new safety rules forced the company to retire the original design. It was a reminder that even convenience has limits, especially when your easy squeeze turns into a chemical squeeze. Tuna noodle loaf mix was the Frankenstein's monster of mid-century meal kits. Inside the box was powdered sauce, dried noodles, and a mysterious gelatin binder that turned dinner into a wiggling block of horror. Add canned tuna and water, and voila, a loaf that looked alive and smelled dead. It wobbled on the plate like it was trying to escape, oozing grayish liquid from its sides. Kids stared at it in fear. Parents pretended it was innovative, and even cats circled it suspiciously. Some households gave up halfway and called it soup instead. It still wasn't edible. The gelatin made it both dry and wet at the same time, a texture only nightmares could describe. It jiggled when it shouldn't have, squeaked when sliced, and somehow managed to taste both fishy and flavorless. Families across America tried to eat it politely, but even the dog walked away. The company behind it called it a wholesome family dinner. History called it culinary trauma. The 1970s produced many bad ideas, but this one defied physics, taste, and mercy. Tuna noodle loaf mix was proof that some foods should remain mysteries. Yes, this was real. In the 1950s, novelty stores sold dog smoking kits, designed to teach pets to hold cigarettes in their mouths while exhaling smoke. Advertisements promised endless laughter and party entertainment, complete with instructions and a small clamp to fit over a dog's snout. Crowds gathered at picnics or block parties to watch Fido puff away like a tired office worker. The dogs, of course, had no idea what was happening. The kits didn't hurt them directly, but secondhand smoke and sheer indignity probably didn't help. Even by mid-century standards, it was surreal, a nation so charmed by smoke that it tried to share it with its pets. These were the years when fun often meant forgetting the line between novelty and nonsense. It was the decade's most surreal expression of human boredom, proof that if people could make something smoke, they would. The craze faded as quickly as it began, but the photos still haunt history books. Smiling families, tail-wagging pets, and a cloud of absurdity no one seemed to notice. In the 1950s, even man's best friend couldn't escape humanity's worst ideas. Wartime fat collection cans sat on stovetops across America, gleaming with leftover grease from the day's meals. Housewives carefully strained bacon drippings and cooking fat into these tins, knowing they were doing their part for the war. Once full, they would take the cans to local collection centers, where the fat would be processed into glycerin, used to make soap, explosives, and ammunition. It was a strange thought. The same grease that fried breakfast could one day fuel a bomb or help clean a soldier's uniform. Posters urged, "Your kitchen grease fights," a slogan that made every spoonful of bacon drippings feel like ammunition. Housewives compared how much they saved, proudly writing their totals on scrap paper beside the stove. Even the smallest families felt they were helping win the war from their kitchens. Families took pride in this strange form of recycling, seeing it as both patriotic and practical. Even children joined in, scraping pans and pouring carefully to avoid spilling a precious ounce. The government ran cheerful ads urging citizens to save your kitchen fat for victory. It turned a humble household task into a powerful act of contribution. Today, those dented grease cans tell a story of sacrifice, resourcefulness, and how every drop truly counted. Fruit roll-ups' original recipe were the ultimate lunchbox upgrade, a sticky sheet of fruit-flavored fun that promised real fruit taste. In reality, it was closer to edible plastic coated in corn syrup. The first generation of fruit roll-ups, launched in the 1980s, came loaded with artificial dyes, synthetic flavors, and enough preservatives to outlast civilization. Kids loved peeling them off wax paper, stretching them into shapes, and pretending they were eating something healthy. Parents convinced themselves they were fruit. The truth? They were sugar sculptures, with a shelf life measured in decades. When health watchdogs started questioning the ingredients, the company quietly reformulated the recipe. Less dye, fewer chemicals, more fruit concentrate. The newer versions looked cleaner but never tasted quite as wild. The original, in all its neon, sticky glory, disappeared, banned by shifting health standards and evolving food laws. But if you remember licking red dye off your fingers in 1985, you were part of an era that mistook chemistry for cuisine. Swanson Great Starts. Breakfast TV dinners were frozen optimism at its frostiest. They came in divided trays featuring scrambled eggs, pancakes, and sausages, all perfectly soggy by the time they hit your plate. The idea was breakfast made easy, but it ended up tasting like Sunday morning regret. The pancakes absorbed the syrup like sponges soaking in despair. The eggs had a rubbery snap that made you question if they were ever eggs at all. Even the sausage, supposedly the star, was gray and flavorless, like breakfast had just given up. The eggs looked like yellow sponges, and the pancakes had the consistency of damp sponges. Even the syrup was trapped in its own compartment, slowly merging into every corner of the tray. The smell alone warned you that no great start was coming. The pancakes were rubbery, the eggs tasted like cardboard, and the syrup managed to be both too thin and too sweet. Even the sausage looked tired, gray, greasy, and spiritually defeated. It was convenience at its most depressing, the kind of meal that made you rethink your entire morning. Swanson had cornered the dinner market, but breakfast proved too fragile to freeze. Great Starts turned into a short-lived joke, a frozen reminder that some things are better made fresh or not at all. Hand-cranked egg beaters were a kitchen essential long before electricity became universal. These clever tools used gears and a spinning handle to whip eggs, cream, or batter with surprising efficiency. Housewives prized them for their precision and control, though they required steady hands and strong wrists. For many, the sound of the gears clicking and whirring became part of the morning routine, a mechanical heartbeat of breakfast. Some homemakers claimed they could feel the exact moment the eggs reached the perfect froth, trusting muscle memory over measurement. In some kitchens, the same egg beater was used for decades, its handle worn smooth from years of breakfasts and Sunday cakes. It was craftsmanship made to last, built for a world that believed tools should serve generations, not seasons. Children would often beg to help, turning the handle and watching the blades blur into motion. Despite their simplicity, they represented progress, one step closer to the modern appliances that would transform kitchens in the decades to come. Today, they sit in antique shops as quaint reminders of when cooking was a true hands-on art form. High-sodium frozen dinners were the guilty comfort of 1980s convenience culture. Every brand from Swanson to Banquet filled freezer aisles with Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and gravy that could outlast the apocalypse. They were fast, cheap, and dependable, the perfect meal for anyone too tired to cook after a long day. The downside? Each tray contained more salt than an ocean wave. Doctors began linking them to hypertension and heart disease, and suddenly, convenience looked like a killer. What started as a quick dinner fix turned into a health crisis on a plate. The sodium levels weren't just high, they were astronomical, often topping 2,000 milligrams in a single meal. Nutritionists joked that a Swanson dinner was less food and more brine in a box. The FDA's evolving nutritional guidelines in the late 1980s forced companies to pull or reformulate entire product lines. The old recipes disappeared, replaced by heart-healthy versions that never quite tasted the same. For people who grew up on them, it felt like losing a piece of home, the salty, buttery kind. Frozen dinners didn't die, they just got watered down, literally and figuratively. But those who remember the originals can still taste that sodium-soaked nostalgia and the guilt that came with every delicious bite. Pizza in a Can by Chef Boyardee was the culinary equivalent of optimism gone wrong. A revolutionary family pizza kit, it promised homemade flavor with the convenience of a can, which should have been the first warning sign. Inside was dough mix, sauce, and cheese powder that smelled like damp cardboard left in the sun. The dough was sticky, the sauce metallic, and the cheese refused to melt no matter how long you baked it. When you finally pulled it from the oven, it looked like regret covered in red paint. Families gathered in excitement for pizza night, only to discover the crust was chewy in the middle and hard enough on the edges to double as roofing material. Even hungry teenagers couldn't pretend to like it. Chef Boyardee advertised it as fun for the whole family, and in a way, they weren't wrong, because everyone laughed at how terrible it was. It was edible only in theory, and memorable only because of how impossible it was to forget. Pizza in a can became a symbol of 1970s food ambition, a time when anything seemed possible, even if it tasted like despair. Glass butter churns were once the pride of every 1940s kitchen. These hand-cranked wonders turned cream into golden butter, all powered by elbow grease and patience. Housewives would pour in cream, attach the handle, and churn until their arms ached. The rhythmic sound of the paddles striking glass filled homes across rural America. The process was a family affair. Children fought for turns, and everyone cheered when the butter finally thickened and turned golden. Some people added a pinch of salt or even a splash of milk to make it smoother, perfecting their own signature recipe. It wasn't just cooking, it was ritual, part science and part love. Children often took turns spinning the handle, their laughter mixing with the creak of the churn as they waited for the magic to happen. The moment the butter began to separate from the buttermilk felt like a small miracle, a tangible reward for hard work. Fresh butter spread across warm bread wasn't just food, it was comfort, earned and savored. Though electric mixers soon replaced these churns, the glass jars remained treasured relics, clear reminders of a time when patience was part of every recipe. If these forgotten 1960s foods made you smile, cringe, or remember a taste you swore you'd forgotten, tell us your favorite in the comments, tap that like button to keep the nostalgia cooking, and subscribe so you never miss another bite of history.